الناس لا يريدون إلا كتاب الله ولا يريدون إلا سنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى وسلم والله المستعان.
Number one is having intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan. Number one is having intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan. Sheikh Fawzan, he mentions or he states, if a fasting person has sexual intercourse with his wife, his fast will be nullified. His fast will be nullified. And he will be obligated to make up that day. He'll be obligated to make up that day. So that's part of it. Part of it is that he has to make up that day. The day on which he had intercourse with his family or with his wife during the daylight hours of Ramadan. And of course, it's vice versa. Sheikh Fawzan, he mentions, likewise, one is obligated to make up for that day, but also pay a penalty, or there's also expiation. So what's connected to that is two things, right? A person has to make up the day and they have to pay there's a penalty or an expiation. Likewise, one more thing needs to be done. What else needs to be done? Tawbah. Right? Tawbah, right? Repent, right? Make up the day, right? And an expiation. Moreover, now, and the expiation, right? The expiation or the penalty, right? The penalty is that a person frees a slave, right? The penalty is that a person frees a slave. And if one is not able to free a slave, then they are to fast for 2 consecutive months. Right? They're not able to free a slave, then they fast for 2 consecutive months. And if one is unable to do that, then they do what? We discussed this yesterday. They do what? Feed 60 poor people or needy people. Right? Some notes, or jot this down. Say, for example, a person has intercourse more than once in the day. You with me? How does the expiation work? Per occurrence. No. What else we got? Any other issues? Any other answers? Person has intercourse more than one time during that day. It depends. The scenarios. The first scenario is that it's before he pays the penalty, before he does the expiation. Right? Before he does the expiation, right? His expiation may be that he's going to feed 60 poor people, for example. They're from the people from that bracket, right? That can feed 60 poor people, right? So they have intercourse, right? And they feed the 60 poor people immediately, right? They do it what? Immediately. Later on in that day, right? They have intercourse. There's another penalty. Right? So if the penalty is paid, we're talking about in a single day. Because if it happens in multiple days, it's a penalty for each what? Day. The issue is connected to if it happens in more than once in what? One day. So if the penalty is paid, right, and they have intercourse again, and there's another what? Another penalty. However, if they have intercourse, they still haven't paid the penalty. They have intercourse again, they still haven't paid the penalty. They have intercourse again, they still pay the penalty. There's only one what? Penalty. See the difference? Now, Sheikh Fawzan mentions that in his explanation of Umdatul Fiqh. Because that can happen, right? But the issue is whether the person paid the what? The penalty. If they took care of the penalty, right? And then have intercourse after that, then there's another what? Another penalty. No. If they haven't paid the penalty, then it's still one affair. The affair is that they had what? Intercourse. Still one issue. The issue that they had intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan. However, if they paid the penalty, they took care of the sin or the occurrence. So now they did it again. So now it's another what? Another penalty.